Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our NSS Space Forum, connecting the space curious to the space serious. I'm Bert Dicht, Managing Director of Membership, and on behalf of my colleague, Larry Ahern, Vice President of Chapters, we would really like to welcome you to another series of our virtual space forums. As always, we'd like to do a little bit in terms of the agenda. We'll do some virtual etiquette, a few announcements, then the upcoming space forums, and then we'll get right into our program, and then we'll close for the evening. So as always, if you want to submit a question, it is best to use the Q&A function because it's seen directly by the panelists and our speaker, and it's a little easier to pull everything from the Q&A. But feel free to use the chat function as well. Because others can see that, I ask everybody to be respectful of the speaker and the rest of the audience. We did get a number of questions that were submitted beforehand, so our speaker is going to be trying to address some of those as we go through the session. And if we have time at the end, as always, we can turn on someone's microphone so you're able to ask a question directly to our speaker. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. I do want to remind everybody about the upcoming ISDC, the International Space Development Conference, A New Space Age. It is going to be held in Frisco, Texas at the Embassy Suites, May 25th to the 28th. We've got sessions on the moon, space settlement, interplanetary infrastructure, space development, many roads to space, Mars, and much, much more. And then in terms of some of our speakers, we've got Dr. Bonnie Dunbar, we have Jared Isaacman, Dr. Pascal Lee, Dylan Taylor, Dr. David Livingston, Janet Ivey, and many, many more. We're adding new speakers as we speak. We are going to be doing a special session, a town hall in a few weeks to introduce you to the ISDC. And we're actually going to have several of our speakers on hand to kind of do an intro for the ISDC. I will put the link for the ISDC into our chat during the session. So feel free to check it out and ask us any questions that you might have. And we really hope to see you there in Frisco, Texas. As always, please feel free to give to our cause. If you're enjoying these programs, like the space forums and town halls, your donations help support many activities like this. I will again put the link into our chat. We appreciate all the donations we've received up to now. And if you are going to be making a donation, thank you in advance. It really does help us out. Also remind everybody to complete the post-forum survey. It only takes a few minutes to complete. As always, it really does help us in planning and improving these programs. The survey is anonymous. It's going to appear as soon as we end the space forum, and it won't take you more than just a couple of minutes to fill out. So thank you so much in advance for those that do it. So let me give you an update on what's happening coming up. 2 weeks from tonight, we have a space solar power session with John Mankins and Gary Barnhard. Then, as I mentioned, that ISDC town hall on April 13th. It's a little later than our typical dates, which would be the 6th, but we know that's falling in a holiday week with Passover starting that week and Good Friday and the Easter weekend. So we decided to postpone that to the week after. Then on April 20th, we've got a great special speaker, a brand new book called The New Guys, and the author Meredith Bagby. This is a book about the 35 new guys, the astronauts who were selected in 1978 to fly on the space shuttle. And it is a fabulous book. Almost finished it right now. We're going to be giving away a few signed copies as door prizes. So hopefully you can join us. We're also working to try to reschedule our Healthy Eating and Living on Earth and in the Cosmos presentation by Maria Kuhlman. We'll let you know when we can get that organized. And Larry and I are working very diligently to fill out the rest of the schedule as we go into May and June. As I mentioned, these are some of the individuals we have in our queue. We're working with them, trying to identify dates. So you'll be hearing much more about that as we move forward. And hopefully by the next Space Forum, we'll have them all lined up and let you know when the dates are and who will be speaking. So, but always pay attention to our emails, and we'll let you know when those things are happening. So tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce our program this evening, and connecting the space curious to the space serious. And maybe our speaker will talk about this image that I found on her website about aim higher. Very impressive, and I'll let her handle the discussion about that. But Christina Korp is our speaker this evening, and she is what she calls an astronaut wrangler. She's been an astronaut manager, a space advisor. She's the founder of Space for a Better World and also president of Purpose Entertainment. She's worked with many astronauts, including Buzz Aldrin and Nicole Stott. So you're going to be hearing more about that. She does amazing activities and adventures to create an awareness of space and showing how space makes life better on Earth. So it's my pleasure to introduce Christina. So Christina, it's all yours. I'm going to stop sharing and we'll go. So there you go, all set.
All right, well, thank you, Bert, and thank you, Fred, and everybody who's here. I'm honored to be here to speak to the National Space Society group, because I haven't been to the gatherings for a little while, but I have been there many, many times. Most of the time wrangling Buzz and trying to get him to where he needs to go. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm going to show a presentation, and I'm going to start with a video that'll give you kind of a quick little overview of who I am, and then I'll explain kind of my journey into space and basically how I believe that we can attract people, the space curious to the space serious. And I'll run you through that here in a moment, but we will start with a video.
Hi, I am Christina Korp, and I am known as the Astronaut Wrangler. I managed Apollo 11 astronaut Buzz Aldrin for 10 years, and that welcomed me into a world of many, many, many astronauts. We all have a shared purpose to raise awareness about all the ways that space benefits all life on Earth. I became the witness to the impact of Apollo and what it did for the world and how we all benefit from it today. So I feel a sense of responsibility to use this knowledge and this access that I've gained to hopefully get more allies and to get people to understand the value of going to space, humans going to space, what we can learn from space, and how it benefits all life on Earth.
So that
Hi,
is,
I am
oops, sorry, I'm trying to go to the next slide. So that is a 1-minute case study from my gala that I did last year for the 50th anniversary of Apollo 16. You know, for those of you who know me, I started working for Buzz Aldrin 15 years ago, and this was not the plan for my life. And what I realized very quickly was how I think I'm an average American, where I knew that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon, but I did not realize that there were 6 moon landings, that there were 24 Apollo astronauts who reached the moon, 12 men who walked on the moon. But I was aware of this image, Earthrise. You know, there are some images that are just iconic, that no matter who you are, you end up seeing them, and they are just ingrained in pop culture. And this is Buzz Aldrin. It's funny how many times people have seen this image and then they don't understand. I don't know why it's going back and forth. They don't understand that it's Buzz, that Neil had the camera and that he took pretty much all the photos of Buzz on the moon. And so all of those iconic photos are Buzz Aldrin. And I had no idea what an impact this image was going to have on my life, because this is what my life was like before. I grew up in a family of 10 children in South Dakota, and I was in a family band growing up, starting at the age of 12. I wanted to be a rock star. This was what my plan was, to go and tour all over the world and sing. And so after 10 years of being in my family band, I went to Los Angeles to pursue my rock star dreams. And I had some success. I got signed to Warner Brothers. I sang on a couple of Ringo Starr records, got to know Ringo fairly well, was hanging out with Aerosmith. This was my life before. And then after a little while, I needed to take a break because I just really was running myself down. And I did some post-production in film and TV for a little while. And then I worked for John Tesh, and he taught me how to run his record label and production company. But I had been working since I was 12 years old, and I just really needed a break. So I answered an ad in the Hollywood Reporter to work for Buzz Aldrin. And people usually laugh about that because they're like, how did you get this job? Well, I answered an ad and I thought, this was going to be a nice, quiet, boring life for me. This was going to be easy because, Buzz was 77 years old at the time. I thought he probably read the paper every day, and that this would be a piece of cake compared to what I had been doing before. And the reason I had been hired actually was because Buzz's ex-wife Lois and her daughter were running the company, but they had never actually run any other companies. And so they were doing a pretty good job, but they needed somebody who knew how to handle his appearances and his media and his PR. So coming from what I had been doing before, managing Buzz seemed like a piece of cake. So on January 2nd of 2008, I started my job working for Buzz. And on January 20th, I got to go to my very first full moon party, which we did at his condo. And so this is a picture of Buzz and me on that first birthday party of his, full moon party. And little did I know how ingrained in his life I would become. He signed this photo to me, to Christina, thanks for becoming a member of our family, 2 weeks after I started working for him. And I never, ever, I have to admit, I was surprised that he signed that to me that way, because I will tell you, I didn't know that astronauts autographed items. And so he had to sign all of these items that were actually for sale. And as part of my job, I had to lay them out on the table. And I thought, I'm going to put a picture out there for myself. And then the next day, when I had to gather all the photos that had been signed, he had signed everything else, but not the photo for me. And so then I thought, oh, that was really presumptuous of me. I shouldn't have overstepped the bounds. And he happened to come in right when I was picking up the picture. And he said, no, leave that there. Didn't you wonder why I left it there? And I said, yeah, I'm sorry, I should have asked. And he said, no, I'm trying to think about what I want to say. And then the next day when I came into the office, he had signed this photo to me, and it was sitting on my desk. And I thought it was kind of a premonition for the 10 years of my life that I was not expecting the next 10 years of my life. And I have to admit, it was really just a job for me, but look at what happened. Here I am getting to meet, hang out with Buzz at Kennedy Space Center, meet Armstrong and Michael Collins. And, getting to go to the White House. I got to go meet President Obama on the very, about a year and a half into working for Buzz. It was the 40th anniversary of Apollo 11. And I had asked to go to the White House because I thought, this is my chance to get to meet the president. And if I didn't ask, there was no way I was going to get to go because Lois, Buzz's wife, there's no way she was going to offer for me to go. So I offered to pay my own way, to pay for my own plane ticket and my own hotel. And I said I would come and help. And actually, when NASA said, are you coming along on the trip? I said, well, I want to. I'm willing to pay my own way. And they said, no, we need help. Buzz is a handful. So we'll cover your travel and your hotel because we really need help there. He does so many interviews. So, and then thankfully I got to meet the president. And when people would see this photo, they always asked me, how did you get in the middle of this photo? And incidentally, when we were going in the White House, Buzz had introduced me to President Obama as his mission director. He said, this is my mission director, Christina. And Obama said, of course you have a mission director. And so after they brought everybody in and the president said, okay, we're going to have each of the astronauts come up with their families and then we'll take a photo. And so I stepped back and thought, I shook his hand. I'm in the Oval Office. It's all I could ask for. And then Buzz took a couple of photos with President Obama and his family. And then they started walking away from the desk. And then President Obama turned to me and said, "Mission director, get over here." And I was like, "Really?" And then he said, "Buzz, come on over." And then he said, "We always put women in the middle because they're better looking." And so people, when they would see the photo of me with Buzz and President Obama being in the middle, they'd always say, "Oh, I have Photoshop too." But I said, no, I have the photo of that photo being taken, which is, you can see here on the screen. You see up in the corner, I'm there with Michael Collins, and I met him really early on. I met him much sooner than Neil Armstrong, and I just loved Mike. He was just such a wonderful guy. He was really my favorite Apollo astronaut. He was just really witty and funny, and just really down to earth, really, really, really wonderful guy. Neil, I have to say, Neil was just so, he didn't show a lot of emotion. He didn't say a lot of words. So I'm grateful that I got to meet him several times, but I finally realized in this photo up in the middle where my daughter is a baby was the day that the Apollo 11 crew and John Glenn got the Congressional Gold Medal in Washington at the Capitol building. And I thought I better ask Neil for a photo. I see him at these events and I never ever asked to get a photo with him, and I finally did. So I only have a few from that day. So Buzz, as some of you may know, started to do some things that were not what you would expect from an Apollo astronaut. So remember, I came from the entertainment world. I was a singer. I toured all over the world. I was hanging out with rock stars. Like I said, I didn't know anything about guys who walked on the moon. But pretty soon I was welcomed into this world like this, as you see. And I started meeting all the Apollo astronauts. I started learning about the moon landings and realizing, wow, I think most people are like me. That I don't think most people know that there was more than one moon landing and that there were 12 men who walked on the moon. And so, there came a point where we were promoting things for the 40th anniversary of Apollo 11. And I said, you should try to do things to get people's attention like me. And so we had this opportunity to do this making of rap video with Snoop Dogg. And at first, when the Funny or Die people came to us and proposed this idea, it was Will Ferrell's comedy website. Buzz at first said, I don't know, the other astronauts aren't going to like this. They're not going to. And I said, but who cares? You don't need to convince those guys. You need to convince people like me that they should pay attention to what's going on in space, because I'm telling you, they're not. Most people don't know what's going on in space. So thankfully, Snoop Dogg was really, really wonderful. And he agreed to do this making of rap video with us. And that's Talib Kweli, who's more of an underground rapper, but he was just so gracious and so respectful. And if you have never seen it, and you have a chance, go Google Buzz Aldrin and Snoop Dogg making of the rocket experience. There's a rap video too. There's an actual full song, but the making of video is the best thing. It's really, really funny. And it has Quincy Jones and some other people in it. And the thing I like the most is Buzz's sense of humor in it. And so, and it got people's attention. No one would ever expect Buzz Aldrin to be in a video like this with Snoop Dogg. And then next, in the next year after that, Dancing with the Stars called and asked if Buzz wanted to be on the show. Now I have to tell you a funny story about this, which was they had called me. Buzz was traveling in Washington, and actually he was at the White House. And Dancing with the Stars producers called and said, we would like Buzz to be on the next season of Dancing with the Stars. And so I loved this idea. Remember, I'm an entertainment person, and I thought, great, this is a high profile show. This would get him a lot of attention, but he'll never do it. This is what I was thinking. He'll never do it. So I call him up, and he, he's in the White House at a meeting, but I thought he was done with his meeting. And so I said, hey, Dancing with the Stars wants you on the next season of the show. And he goes, okay. And I said, okay, well, but here's the deal. It's this many weeks. You have to dance. You have to do this. And he kept saying, okay. And I said, you have to dance every day. And he was he kept saying, okay. And I said, okay, so you want to do it? And he's like, yeah, sounds good. I'll talk to you later. Righto. And then, so I couldn't believe it. And I called them back, and then, he agreed to do the show. Well, the funny thing is way later, he told me, I was just trying to get you off the phone. But I have to tell you that he really enjoyed doing Dancing with the Stars because, first of all, he was getting exercise every day. He was hanging out with all these young, beautiful people. And it really, I don't know, gave him this zest for life that he didn't realize that he still had, at 80 years old. And because at that point he was 80 years old. He was born in 1930. Sorry. And so this kind of gave him a whole new lease on life. And so this was the kind of thing that I think some people thought that I really I don't know, tried to make him do, but he was always pretty open to doing things that hopefully this is how he would put it. If people see me on Dancing with the Stars and then they realize, oh, that's an old astronaut. Oh, what's he doing now? Then he hoped that they would pay attention that he was planning Mars missions and things like that. So that was his thinking, which I really liked because he got it, that he had to get people's attention. So then, I actually not that long after that, within a year after that, he decided to divorce his wife Lois, and I ended up having to completely take over his company because she and her daughter had been running the company, and then he divorced her, and then all of a sudden that's when he became my full-time, my full responsibility. And so the good thing about that was, though, is we were very aligned in he started to see what I was trying to do, which was to try to get him out in the mainstream, talking about space and trying to get young people to pay attention. Because he was always like, I got to keep this going. It's the young people who are going to be doing the Mars missions. So then I tried to do everything I could to use my entertainment experience and the things that I had done before to try to promote his vision of going to Mars. So one of the first things actually was the Get Your Ass to Mars campaign. It's not the shirt that's in the middle, although that's a version of it, but we had agreed to have him go and do this panel. It was the first NASA panel ever at Comic-Con in San Diego. And I made these prototype shirts of Get Your Ass to Mars. And I had one and he had the other one. And so he wore it. And I had tweeted a photo of him with this Get Your Ass to Mars t-shirt on, and everybody went nuts. And so I thought, okay, I think I have something here. And so I decided to make the first Get Your Ass to Mars t-shirt look like similar to the NASA logo, which is like the photo of me wearing the Destination Mars shirt there in the bottom. We just changed it up though, reversed the swish. We made it look like the Martian surface. We put Phobos and Deimos in orbit around it, and we changed the fonts of everything. And so I just knew that if people just liked one tweet of him wearing a shirt that said Get Your Ass to Mars, that maybe we had something here. And once, he latched onto that Get Your Ass to Mars, it really caught on. And then meanwhile, we started doing lots of different things to promote Mars. We did the Nat Geo book, Mission to Mars, My Vision for Space Exploration, which was really kind of his roadmap of his cycler system of getting to Mars in perpetual cycling orbits. We did the kids version, Welcome to Mars, which actually won the National Science Teachers Association Best Science Book 2 years in a row for middle school age kids. I had this dream that I had turned Buzz into a hologram. And the next day I had to drive him to an interview, and I said, hey, can I turn you into a hologram? And he was like, what? And I said, I had a dream that I turned you into a hologram, and I was just thinking it would be really cool if I could capture you that way so that people could see you the way that I see you every day. And he was like, okay. And so I kid you not, the next day, I wrote an email that day, to our team just to say, hey, I've got this idea I want to do. I want to make a virtual reality experience of Buzz. I don't know how we'll do it. I want to make him a hologram. I'd like to make these giant Mars maps for our foundation. And I had just written all this out, and, someone on our team was like, oh, it's nice to dream. And I was like, okay, fine. You don't believe me. I'll figure out how to make this happen. And then the next day, NASA emailed me and said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about making Buzz into a hologram. And that is what became Destination Mars. It was a NASA Microsoft collaboration of trying to take all the photos from Curiosity that they were already using to try to plan Mars missions, to plan the trajectory of where Curiosity would go. And they thought, well, maybe we could make a virtual reality experience so people could actually see what the the Martian landscape looked like in virtual reality, but looking at real images. And then they had Buzz be the guide of it. And I really liked it, but I have to admit that I didn't feel like it was Buzz's vision though. And so we had done this hologram volumetric capture of Buzz to go to the people who were staying in the high seas habitat in Hawaii. And while I was with them, I said, I really want to make Buzz's cycling pathways like in a way that people can understand it, because it's such a detailed technical concept that he has, and he never has enough time to explain it to people in ways that they understand. And so I explained this to the people who were doing the other project, and then they said, we'll try to help you get people to fund this. And so thankfully, they actually raised all the money. Buzz Aldrin's son, Andy Aldrin, and I wrote the script and sent all the technical details and lots of renderings and imaging. And then that became Cycling Pathways to Mars. And if you have a chance and you ever do virtual reality on Oculus or on HTC Vive, it's on Steam and it's free. I'm really proud of this because for those of you who know who Bill Gerstenmaier is, he used to be number 3 at NASA, the head of all human and robotics space exploration, but he's at SpaceX now. The first time I showed that experience, the virtual reality experience to him, I remember he took the goggles off of his head and he looked at me and he said, I finally get it. I finally get what he's trying to do. And I was like, yes, I did it. And Buzz was so insulted. He was like, how dare he? I've been meeting with him for 20 years. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. But the thing I'm most proud about the Cycling Pathways to Mars VR is that how many people have come up to me once they learned that I was a part of making this a reality. How many people have told me, wow, that's the thing that made me decide to work in space. And that's where I then this thing about attracting the space curious, then I feel like I've been on the right track. And I'm really proud of that. We won the Webbies for Cycling Pathways to Mars, and we were nominated for an Emmy for it. Buzz and I went and presented to the Emmy committee, and we didn't get it. There was a refugee virtual reality experience that beat us out, but I'm still very proud of that. And then up in the corner where you see him holding the flag, we started doing fashion collaborations. That one was with Sprayground, where they made backpacks and coats and hats and Mars themed type like products that were a limited edition. So just however we could, in fashion, in pop culture, in books, in TV. For those of you who may have seen, he was on The Big Bang Theory, he was on 30 Rock. Like, that's a thing I've always appreciated. He's willing to do all of these things. And whenever I would bring something like this up, I was really happy that he was open to trying it, because he understood that this is, he got it, that this was the way that we were going to attract people in. So along the way, what happened as well, though, and which was unexpected to me, was that this was just my job. I thought I'm going to use all of my skills as well as I can to try to get, again, people like me who loved space but didn't know a lot about space to feel like it was relevant to them or to excite them about it. And I started taking things more seriously, though, as far as my role with the Apollo astronauts, when I introduced Buzz to Stephen Hawking for the first time. Stephen Hawking had been trying to meet Buzz over and over, and Lois never cared about this. If it wasn't making money, if it wasn't something that had to do with Hollywood, she didn't really care about it. And so it wasn't until after he divorced her that I made it a priority to try to take Buzz to meet Stephen Hawking. So we were going to Europe to do a charity event in London, and actually we went to the IAC in Naples, and then we went back to the UK, and we did this charity event in the morning, and we'd had this appointment to go to Cambridge to meet Stephen Hawking in his office. And I was like, can anybody drive us to Cambridge? So some of the people who were organizing it said, oh, we can drive you. And they didn't realize where we were going. And when we got there, there was a BBC crew filming, and we had to sign some releases. I had no idea that they were going to be there when we arrived. Anyway, after we got done visiting with Stephen, we went to London, and Buzz had to do a BBC radio thing that night. And then afterwards, we went upstairs to the hotel bar just to hang out with the people who'd been on the show. And one of the panelists was a Harvard professor who said to me, "So what did you guys do today?" And I said, "Oh, we went to a charity event in the morning, and then we went to Cambridge to meet Stephen Hawking for the first time. That was really cool. And then we came back to London, and then we did this radio show, and now we're here with you." And he goes, "What? Are you serious?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, you're a part of history now. Do you realize that?" And I said, no, I'm nobody. This is just my job." And he said, "No, you don't understand what I would give to have been in the room for that meeting. You need to start paying attention to this. Does this happen to you a lot? Are you in these meetings a lot?" And that was really the moment where I realized, actually, he's right. I am witnessing history all the time, and I was just thinking of it as my job. And so then I started thinking, I really need to pay attention to this, and I really need to help enable these kinds of meetings, because the two historical people that will have impacted the world and will continue to impact the world for a long time. So what was wonderful about Stephen was he was so lovely to us, and we ended up becoming pretty good friends with him, and we'd visit him at his house, and we filmed at his house. And he let my kids and my family come to his house one time for tea. He was just really, truly lovely. And I was privileged to have gone to his funeral, his memorial at Westminster Abbey. But this is the moment too where I started thinking I really need to take all of this a bit more seriously. But these ladies are kind of what really changed and led me to what I'm doing now. I have literally heard thousands of moon landing memories. I have so many that at some point I need to probably do something with them. But I realized, this was just the reality of the guys. Like every day, everywhere we went, walking into a hotel, at breakfast, at lunch, everywhere, someone would come up and tell a moon landing memory. And so for Buzz and the other guys, this is just their reality. But then I began to realize, wow, I'm the keeper of the memories. Like I'm witnessing people pouring out their hearts to these guys who represented, achieving impossible dreams. And I began to think, I really need to start paying attention to these. So it got to the point for a little while where if it seemed obvious someone was going to come and, tell us their story, Buzz say, "Hold on, Christina's going to record you." So I actually have quite a few videos of people telling Buzz their moon landing memory. I wish I had recorded this one. This one is special, and this kind of leads to what I'm doing today and why I'm so passionate about what I do now. So Sermon and Pervin, these are two sisters who had hired Buzz to give a speech in Nashville, Tennessee. And when we got in the green room, they said, "Oh, now we can tell you our moon landing memory." And so, they sat down, and he was eating breakfast and trying to prepare his speech. And they started to tell him. So Sermon, the older sister with the lighter hair, said, "We were young girls in Turkey. We lived in a village with no running water, no electricity. Our mother couldn't read or write. Our father only had a 5th grade education, but he was so excited and so passionate about the Apollo missions to the moon. And so he wanted his girls to have a good education. He felt that was the best avenue for us to have a good life. So maybe if we could graduate high school and become teachers, we would be able to have a pathway to having a livelihood and not have to be forced into being a child bride or have to go to work too early." And so anyway, they said their father saved up money and he bought a Grundig radio. And so the night that Apollo 11 landed on the moon, everyone from their village came to listen to the moon landing on that radio. They said there were probably 300 people there from their village and the surrounding areas. And they said, when we heard that Apollo 11 had landed on the moon successfully, we felt like we did it. Everyone was hugging and cheering and crying and jumping up and down. And we were just so proud of what humans had accomplished. We couldn't believe it. Humans were on the moon. And they said after everyone calmed down, they went outside and everyone was sitting on the ground, just looking up at the sky and looking up at the moon. And they were quiet. Now, Sermon was 12 years old, I believe, and Pervin, the younger sister, was 8, I think, and young, like middle school age girls. And I said, what were you thinking when you were sitting there looking up at the moon after that? And they said, we realized we could aim higher for our dreams. Humans were on the moon. Our father had just wanted us to graduate high school, but we knew that if humans were on the moon, we could aim higher. We didn't have to settle for what society or our circumstances were dictating for us. And so the older sister went on to get her PhD in quantum physics, and the younger sister got her MBA. And they said, and now we've hired you for our leadership conference. Our father would be beside himself. And I was listening to this story, like so emotional, like crying and just taking the story in and thinking, wow. So this lit a spark within them to believe that they could do something impossible, like just listening on the radio to the moon landing did that, like helped them accomplish this incredible thing. So that's when I realized, that's what it is. That's what the Apollo moment was about. It's something that this generation doesn't understand, and that I really hope that Artemis can do for this generation, because it's amazing how many, like I said, I'm not kidding. I've heard thousands of moon landing memories. And so to move on, to connecting the space curious to the space serious, I realize in all of my time of, all the people that I've met using my own creative background to try to help promote space, I was a space curious person. And then I've come deep into the space serious. But I meet all the time still space curious people who are worried about, and I'm sorry, I wasn't going to go there yet. They're worried that they're not smart enough to work in space. I will hear this all the time. I'm not good at math, so I guess I can't work at space. I'm like, no, you can work in space. I know lots of people who aren't good at math who work in space. And that's where I feel like it's become my mission to try to get people of all backgrounds, all different skill sets, all different levels, to see that it is possible to work in space. I mean, I took the bare minimum of math and science, not because I wasn't good at it. I didn't want to do math and science. I'm grateful that I have a natural affinity for it, but it isn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be doing creative things, but it has helped me a lot in working with Buzz to understand I had to hear every day about cycling pathways to Mars. I know more about trajectories and using gravity assist than I ever wanted to know. And I'm grateful that I know. But my point is, though, that I think that my skills as an entertainment person to help translate that now is something that's really, really valuable and something that we need more of. And now, I call these ladies my space sisters. I work with these women all the time. And you'll see, if you can see in here, I've been working with a lot of female astronauts lately. Dr. Cyan Proctor, Nicole Stott, who is my main partner in purpose, my friend Oana Tucker, who's there in the black top and the white pants. She's from Romania, and she's the space curious. She always tells everybody, I've come from the space curious to the space serious. We've got Poppy Northcutt there in the middle, the first woman to work in mission control, Susan Kilrain, the second woman to pilot the space shuttle and the youngest person to pilot the space shuttle. She was also a Navy test pilot. So Young Yi, who is the first and only Korean ever to go to space. My friend Bex, who has done an expedition with me to Antarctica, and Naoki Yamazaki, a JAXA astronaut, the second Japanese woman to go to space. And I call these my space sisters. And what I really love about working with these women is that they all feel the same way that I do. They believe, first of all, half of them are artists, and most of them still have some sort of art sensibility to them. And that's something that we're all passionate about trying to say, which is, as Nicole Stott will say, with the STEM movement, we're trying to tell people to use half their brain. And some people are super technical and they get it, but for a lot of people like me, I use both sides of my brain pretty equally. And I think it's really valuable to have a lot of creative thinking to help with the technical side of things as well. And I think we need more people like that. And so I'm grateful that we have this group. And it's not just these ladies, by the way. I mean, Charlie Duke and I work really, really closely together now too. And he's just been wonderful and really supportive of me since I left Buzz. I left, by the way, after the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, because at that point it was 12 years of my life. Buzz wasn't doing appearances anymore. And I just decided I was going to go on and do something else. And frankly, during the pandemic, I thought, man, maybe I'm done with space. 12 years of my life, this was not the plan for my life to work in space. Maybe I'll go back to entertainment. But then I talked to my friend Chirag Parikh, who's the executive secretary of the National Space Council, and he was kind of the one who was like, you are out of your mind. You're one of the most connected people I know in the world in space, and especially with the mainstream world who brands space or has a relationship with space. Like, we still need you to be the connector. And so he's the one who really convinced me, look, you have a great network with astronauts. People know who you are. Use your skills. I know that you can make your own way into the space ecosystem and go on to the next phase of your career. So as I joke with people, I'm on a permanent spacewalk now. I let the black hole of space suck me back in. And so I'm a full-on space cadet pretty much permanently now. Now, Astronaut Wrangler. I know people always ask me, how did you become the Astronaut Wrangler? And the main reason I say that is because I work with so many astronauts now, but it's also because when I worked with Buzz, people would always say, since you're the astronaut whisperer, and I'd say, no, that's not the word. Whispering is not the word. I'd say wrangling is a lot more accurate. And I have to tell you, some people I know, they don't like it. They don't like that I call myself the Astronaut Wrangler, but I know a couple of friends who were like, that's so disrespectful. But the funny thing is the astronauts think it's hilarious. And even Jose Hernandez is like, oh my gosh, we're like herding cats. It's like totally accurate. So anyway, as long as the astronauts are cool with it, I have continued to own this role. So through all of this, besides the entertainment side and the inspiration side and all of that, I realized, what I need to do now is to get more people to support space. Is not just to show them the awe and wonder of space, but hopefully get them to understand the ways that space is intertwined in their lives so that they can think that it's relevant to them. Because obviously we've all heard, especially in space, why are we spending money on space? It's so wasteful. We need to be taking care of our planet. And so that's where I come back to, like, wow, I spoke on some panels at the World Economic Forum in 2020, and I realized how little the people who are there with all this money and the people of influence who make decisions for whole governments, how little they realize or that they know that they have at their disposal in space. A lot of them, when I would hear them talk, they would be talking about investing in old space technology, not new space technology, but old stuff. And I think, wow, they have no idea what's going on in space. So somehow we've got to convince not just kids, not just parents, but decision makers about the ways that space is intertwined in our lives. So I've begun to think about, okay, so how can we do that? I really have begun to pay attention to the stories that come out about things that came from space materials. Memory foam, which was invented to soften the landing of a spacecraft. The sole of the Nike shoe that was developed out of materials that I think were originally from the moon boots. Your sunglasses or your glasses, if you wear glasses. You've got thin lenses that are lightweight, durable, scratch proof now because they evolved from the visor of a space helmet. The dust buster came from what they invented to try to actually collect moon rocks and moon dust from the Apollo missions. Baby formula, I didn't even realize baby formula is from coming up with formulas to try to have vitamins in food, space food for astronauts. The infrared thermometer, we have one here with a baby in her ear, but I know most of us adults had one where they would put it against your forehead during the pandemic. And that is a direct NASA technology of measuring the heat between planets. And this is where, like now, for those of you who remember VH1, I feel like everywhere I go, I see pop-ups of an item and think about how space, maybe, space technology or space materials or space whatever has somehow influenced that to become now a consumer product that we use every day. Cell phone, GPS, all of that are the obvious ones, but the ways that I'm trying to attract people into space is through these things. And so I'll tell you, like I had last year when I did this gala in London, I got a hotel sponsor and they came on board because I told them about memory foam. They said, how can we tie our hotels to space? And I said, do you use memory foam? And they said, oh, it's on all of our beds. I said, that is a direct material that was created to soften the landing of a spacecraft. And so these are the ways that I'm trying to connect the space curious. People who are curious about space, but feel like it's this far away place from them. And usually when I tell them, because sometimes they want to know, well, how was it used for space? I mean, I even try to apply it more to the space station because Apollo feels like so long ago. And plus, like water purifiers, air purifiers, lots of stuff that we're doing now is actually being done at the space station. So obviously, you know, if I can get them to pay attention to what's going on in space and that there are humans in space right now, I have to tell you, I mean, I'm the go-to person now for lots of people who are not in space. They see something, they text me and oh, did you see this? I'm sure you know about that. And then the next thing to being at the World Economic Forum, you know, looking at the Sustainable Development Goals. I have studied all of these and I feel very confident that space could help solve all of them. And when I said that to someone in Davos at the World Economic Forum, they looked at me really skeptically, but I have given a keynote and I want to continue to do more keynotes about each SDG, each Sustainable Development Goal, and how I think that space can help contribute to solving each one of them. Because I don't think it's just a few of them. If you go to the UNUSA website, and they do have something for every SDG, but it's only satellites. And to me, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more than just satellite technology that's going on that could help solve all of these. And then, you know, I think the biggest part of things too, sometimes people are so worried about, oh, we're putting all this money into space and they don't see the return on investment. So we have to do a better job in the space world of getting people to understand the return on investment, because it's so beyond what we can measure. Even with this more recent story from October, where it says, you know, last year, the economic output has tripled the agency's budget. Like, we need to do a lot more of those kinds of conversations in the mainstream so that people understand this isn't like, if you know who Professor Brian Cox is from the UK, he's a physicist, he's a good friend of mine. And he said, you know, I really think people think we just put piles of money in a box and then ship it to Pluto. And somehow we've got to do a better job of explaining how, you know, I think it was Scott Kelly who said, I've never seen a dollar spent in space. It's all spent on Earth. And so just having more of those kind of conversations. And I've had, by the way, scientists and researchers say to me, oh, we don't need to care about what the public thinks. We just need to do the research. And I'm like, you need the public to care. How are you going to get your funding if people don't vote for people who support giving you the funding? So it's a multi-layer thing that you have to think about. You need to get a lot more public support in order to get more money into NASA or, you know, into budgets that support space. So that's where I feel like what I do or what I can do can help with that. So what I've done is I've started this foundation, Space for a Better World. And so some of you who follow me probably see I've been doing zero gravity flights. And I'm not going to lie, I'm doing them partially because it's really fun. Here you see me with Charlie Duke and Nicole Stott and a few of our friends. And actually, one of Neil Armstrong's sons, actually his grandson, is down there with the white hat over off to the left, and Rick Armstrong is there, and that was his first zero-G flight. I started doing these to raise money for charity, and it was a big risk. I just thought, well, if zero-G came and said, hey, do you want to sell flights on zero-G? And I said, not really, but if I could do a special flight with astronauts, then that would be more interesting to me. So that's why Charlie Duke started doing these to help me out. And it's a lot of fun. We do them with the flight, with Charlie, but then you actually get to hang out with us for the day, and then we do a private dinner. And so it's more of a whole bonding experience of the day rather than just, you know, anybody can go buy a zero-G flight. And I've done it without the astronauts, and it feels like it's awesome. It's fun, don't get me wrong, but it does feel more like getting on a ride and getting off. And so I think what I'm able to offer with doing it with the astronauts is it's more of a memorable experience and more of a bonding experience. And then I do lots of space art projects with at schools. I try to get kids to express themselves. I do a lot of these with Nicole Stott with her Space for Art Foundation. We're just trying to get kids to think about what space means to them and let them express themselves. I think it's really, really crucial to try to get them to think creatively and find how space can relate to them, because to me, that is going to be more successful to get them into STEM fields than trying to put a math problem or numbers in front of them, unless they're already in love with numbers. And then because I travel around the world with astronauts, I realized I've been to more places on Earth than most astronauts. And so, especially now with Nicole Stott, when I take her to someplace new, we're trying to document that type of thing. And so we started this new online series, which I'm just funding myself through the foundation. And I'm hoping to I need to get a grant or something so that I can do more of these. But we call it The Place I Saw from Space, because we're visiting places on Earth that she's only seen from orbit. So I'm gonna, I'll show you a video here in a second. This is the opening of the video, but this is just a little bit if you haven't watched it.
We're making a rocket out of eco-friendly materials. What do we got here? Branches, wood, we've got fronds over here, we've got sand. Our hope is that we will inspire young people to think about their place on planet Earth and how special it is and how special they are.
Neil Armstrong said when he first stepped on the moon, one small step for man, one giant step for mankind.
You know, I was a girl who had big dreams, who came from a very humble background. And so I've gotten to do extraordinary things because I pursued my dreams. I aimed higher for my dreams than what society or my circumstances dictated. So I really want to light that spark in another kid who's just like me.
Who's born on Mars?
My hope is that by us being here, me and Nicole and the other astronauts, when we travel around the world, that we help light that spark. Rocket ship, small beacon. Through the awe and wonder of space exploration and inspire people to aim higher for their dreams. We did it. This is just the beginning.
And so I'm showing this image that Bert had shown earlier. In October of 2021, I decided to do this giant eco-friendly grass portrait of Stephanie Wilson. Whenever I would go to Atlanta, people would ask me if I knew any Black astronauts or if there ever was a Black astronaut. And usually if they knew there was a woman, they always know about Mae Jemison. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to highlight Stephanie Wilson, the second woman, because she's still a NASA astronaut and she's an Artemis astronaut. And so we had a crop artist make this giant eco-friendly grass portrait of her for World Space Week when we were doing Women in Space. And then all of that white frame is, and the Aim Higher hashtag at the top is 1,600 pieces of kids' space art. And then we did Space Day Atlanta to try to showcase. We had students from Georgia Tech showing younger kids what they're learning and to try to show them pathways to space. And so that's it. I mean, if you don't, I could talk for hours because I have so many stories, but if you don't follow me already, you can learn more about what I'm doing at Space for a Better World and the outreach that I'm doing with Nicole Stott. And then you can follow me on social media at Christina Korp and Space for Better World or spacefabworld.com. So I hope that all of that was clear. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has now.
No, that was great, Christina. Thank you so much. It's been an interesting ride for you and very exciting. We did, as we said, have a number of questions that came in, and I see a number of questions that were submitted, a lot from a guy named Carl, who had a lot of questions for you. So, so we'll try to get to some of those questions. But let me ask a few that came in first, and since our members submitted those beforehand. You've worked with a lot of astronauts. So in working with astronauts to promote space, what's the most surprising thing you learned about being an astronaut or space travel?
What's the most surprising thing learning about space travel? I don't know. I suppose maybe for me that I'm not that surprised. You know, what I will say is I think that a lot of people who are outside of space, you know, surprised that it seems like our progress is slow. Now it's getting quicker. It's gotten a lot quicker in the last several years with SpaceX. And, you know, since we were able to take humans back to our own space station again from the US soil. So I'm happy to see that again. You know, I think what a lot of people, I get asked all the time, why didn't we go back to the moon? And or a lot of people think, like, when the space shuttle program ended, it's too bad that NASA shut down. So I think that, you know, that's the sad reality, is that a lot of people just think that nothing's going on in space. So I think maybe what surprises me a little bit is how the people who are in space are unaware of that's what the perception is outside. So that's why I am trying so hard to connect people and be kind of the bridge, if I can, you know, to that world, because I'm still quite connected outside of the space world too.
When you encounter these kids that you're trying to reach and have them gain an awareness, what do they know about space now? Is their knowledge very limited? Because I know when I was growing up, of course, as part of the Apollo generation, I lived and breathed space and could name every astronaut at 10 years old. And I'm just wondering, how aware are the kids today?
Well, so first of all, I mean, space is an easy sell for kids, right? So they love rockets, they love planets, they love the moon and stars. So it's not a hard thing to sell kids on. What I will say, you know, I still am disappointed about, and I'm hoping that we can try to change this, is how little people, teachers and kids, know about Artemis. And I think that that's a difference between the Apollo era, which was, it was so intertwined in the schools, in every public awareness. And it's something that I'd really like for the Department of Education to make a conscious effort to kind of get it to be something that's throughout the schools, because I think, again, there's this assumption that everybody knows what it is, and they don't. I can't tell you how often I tell science teachers what Artemis is. And so, but you know, being in the Maldives, that kid who said, you know, I'm the first one on Mars, and the other one saying, you know, about Neil Armstrong, you know, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. You know, kids, even in remote areas of the world, though, they're paying attention, you know, when they're reading the history books. So they know about Apollo, they know about Neil and Buzz, but about current activities, I think they mostly know if their parents are already, like my kids are aware, but I work with astronauts, you know, so, you know, for them, this is just the natural thing of being in, you know, knowing what's going on with space, paying attention to it, because I'm mixed up in it. So, you know, I wish that I could say that more kids knew, but I think that we have more work to do.
Right. Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things we're trying to do as well with some of our efforts in NSS. Quick question about how people react when you use the line "space makes life better on Earth." Are they receptive? Do you encounter people who are dismissive? You know, what can you do to try to win them over if they don't agree?
More times than not, they're curious. More times than not, when I say, you know, space benefits life on Earth, they're like, huh? Really? How? You know, and then they want to know. So that's the cool thing, is like, if you say those words, I don't encounter that much pushback. I mean, I think if you're going to get a flat earther, or you're going to get somebody who just wants to be contrarian, you're not going to change those people's mind anyway. But I think that if you actually genuinely say, you know, I'd like to tell you about how space benefits life on Earth, I think most people tend to be curious. They want to know how. So to me, that's a really great opportunity to explain, you know, to people. And so often, if I want to tell something real, I'll talk to them about hyperspectral imaging. I'll say, you know, do you know what hyperspectral imaging is? And usually they don't. And I'll just explain, well, it's super high resolution infrared imaging of the Earth that can help farmers figure out where to plant their crops and make sure that they plant the right crop in the right type of soil, and they don't put it by water that could pollute the that sort of thing. When I can tell it like that, then people seem to be, oh wow, that's really interesting, huh? I'm really curious, can you send me more info about that? So I think that's the thing, that if you can relate it to something that they care about, then they're especially more interested to learn more and dig deeper into it.
Right. No, makes a lot of sense. This question kind of connects with me too, from my generation. Growing up in the 60s, they would bring TVs into class for the launches, and very exciting. How can we bring the wow factor back?
Well, like I was trying to show, I know some people don't like it, but I really do see the value of trying to do it in a way, look, we live in a digital age where we are just fed information constantly. And what I think has happened with the STEM movement, everybody's pushing STEM, education, information. And I think what's missing is the inspiration. So I frankly think we need much more inspiration. The thing that goes first from an aerospace company is the marketing budget. So people, I had this big meeting at one point where I was with, I was going to try to take over Times Square and put a life-size spacecraft. This was 2020. I was trying to put life-size spacecraft all over Times Square. And I had meeting with Boeing, Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, Jacobs. Like, I had a room full of all of these executives, and they were all complaining about how they couldn't attract the workforce that they need, that they were going to high schools, trying to convince people to come work for them. And I said, why would they want to come work for you? And everybody's like, like, how could you say such a thing? And I'm like, they don't know what you're doing. They don't know you're building lunar landers. They don't know that you're building these things. They have no idea that you're doing this super cool thing that is world changing and something they could be proud of to be a part of. And the reason they don't know is because you're not marketing it, and you're not doing messaging about it, and you're not explaining the pride or showing. And that's what I think Apollo era did. I have literally met thousands of people who worked on the lunar landers, who have the pride of making the bolt that went in the leg and the foot of the, and so that's what I think we need to get back again, is marketing, and have people quit poo-pooing in space. There are a lot of really technical people, they don't see the value of it. But I just gave a keynote at the Spaceport Summit, and the only spaceport that I knew about that wasn't the big, like Kennedy Space Center and all Vandenberg and all those others, was Spaceport America. Right. And the reason I know is because Alice Carruth, who is the head of comms there and marketing, is because she does a really good job. And I see that. So in the room, there were 12 other spaceports. And I said to those, I don't know who any of you guys are. and they laughed, but I was serious. And afterwards, they all came up to me and said, you got us thinking. I guess we need to start thinking about how we can make people care about what we're doing. So, that's, to me, it has to be about promoting inspiration. It's partially why I think SpaceX is so successful. He actually kind of ruins everybody though, because Elon doesn't like to pay for marketing, but he does it in a way of when they are live streaming, they do it so well. And the success of those launches is the best PR of seeing those go up, And now, of course, we've got rocket launches. Seems like we've got a launch every week now here on the Space Coast. So, people are paying attention, and people will say to me, man, there's a lot going on in space now. So,
what I like about their live feeds is they don't have a professional commentator. They bring in different engineering managers to do it. I think that's just a brilliant idea.
Well, and they're young,
Yes.
And you can tell they're excited to be there. And I think that that's something, that's helpful too.
We did get one question, and I can put you in touch with them. They said, would you be willing to speak on Zoom to the Washington University Space Law Society? So I'll put you in touch with them. So that sounds good. One question, you kind of touched on it, about people who maybe are not science-minded or math-minded, about how to attract them. And they especially some women maybe, who don't bring the STEM skills, but bring other skills. How do we get them interested in space?
Well, so I'm going to say something that I say sometimes on panels, and it's very controversial, and I know it will make some people mad, but me and a lot of the astronauts feel that the STEM movement was a mistake. And what I mean is that, it's not working. We've got less women in engineering than we did in the 70s. It's not working. And what I mean too is even Buzz and the other astronauts are like, man, we didn't have a STEM movement. We saw these amazing things going on and we wanted to be a part of it. And so there I'm going back to the inspiration thing. The other thing is that Buzz, like when he was at MIT, he was telling me all the time how his physics professors were always doing things like showing artistic things with scientific things. So for instance, his physics professor had a Stradivarius, and he was trying to show how Stradivarius had designed the perfect violin with as an artistic thing, but at that physics wise, it was the perfect instrument. He would use smoke to like show how the airflow of the smoke, you know, would go through the holes of it. And that's something I think, you know, from, I wasn't born when Apollo landed, but I'm not a kid. I'm not as young as some people. And when I was in school, we had pottery and home ec, and we had, you know, mechanics, and we had all these things that people did with their hands, and that's not in schools anymore. And I think that's the kind of stuff that people figured out that how they were good at. And so when I say that I think the STEM movement was a mistake, is that I hear this from young people all the time who say, I'm not good at math and science, so I guess I can't work in space. And I'm like, no, forget about that for a second. There are lots of other jobs. There are jobs in administration. There's a desperate shortage of seamstresses to work in space, to sew the spacesuits and to sew the parachutes. You know, these are jobs that machines can't do. We still need humans to do these things. We need the technicians, you know, to be able to actually, machines cannot do everything. We still need humans to use their hands and to do things that help build rockets. So I say this because people will see me with spacey things on and they'll say, oh, I wasn't good at math, so I guess I could never do that. And I'm like, no, you could do it. And so when I say, and when the astronauts, when we say that the STEM movement is a mistake, it's because it seems like we're sending a message to young people. If you're good at science, technology, engineering, and math, then you're valuable to society. What about everybody else? And so, you know, Nicole Stott will say, why are we trying to get everybody to just use half their brain? Why can't we go back to encouraging people to use their whole brain? Because most of the astronauts that we know are musicians and artists too, or they, you know, they've done something artistic as well. So that's why I say, you know, sometimes people push back at me about STEAM, the arts and STEAM. Oh, you're just trying to take attention away. No. It's too bad we have to add that in and make it STEAM. I just wish that there was I don't know, maybe we can start the whole brain movement or something like to get people to remember to use their whole brain in the creative, innovative thinking. And so I think if we can somehow get people off of that bandwagon and try to find another way to present it. And I say this as a mom who has an 11-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. And my son is really good at math. He loves math. My daughter is really good at math and she hates math. And she wants to do only artistic things, but she's good at math. And so, you know, she's a straight A student, and I want her to discover what she's good at, because all of that is going to be valuable for whatever she decides to do, especially if she decides to go work in either a technical or a creative field. It is all valuable information. So I know some people don't like it when I say those words, but I feel pretty strongly about it.
No, absolutely. Let me take a couple questions that were submitted. I know, like I said, Carl asked a few. So what's your impression of the current space program?
What's my current, well, first of all,
your impression of what's happening now with space.
Well, I'm excited. I wish it could go a little faster, but you know, we had a pandemic that slowed things down. So I'm extremely excited about Artemis. You know, I've been promoting Artemis for a long time, and I really do feel it has the potential to excite the world the same way that Apollo did. We just need to get more people to understand and know about it. These young girls from the UK interviewed me earlier this afternoon for their podcast, and they knew that Artemis was about leading towards a longer term permanent settlement of the moon, but they didn't know about the first woman to like that the first woman was going to go to the moon. So then when I said that, their eyes got big, and I thought, oh, like, you know, the fact that it's an international crew, that it's a more inclusive with women going, you know, when people hear that who are not spacey people, they get excited too. So I'm excited about that, because I would love to see, you know, I get excited when I see women succeed, and I wish it wasn't this way, But I do think that in general, women have to see somebody else do it to believe that they can do it. I'm more like a guy. I got 5 brothers. I can hold my own in a room full of guys, you know. I'm one of 10 kids and I have 5 brothers and a pretty macho dad. And so, you know, I've never felt like I needed that, but I can see how most women, it seems like, need to see somebody who looks like them to believe that it's possible for them, which is a shame. We need to, you know, build more confidence in with young people, but I'm excited about what's going on. And frankly, I believe that Starship is what's going to take us to the moon. That is Artemis to me.
Right. Any interest to go to space yourself?
Heck yeah, I was made for space. I'll have to negotiate my way into that somehow, though. I don't have the money to do it, or try to apply for one of those billionaires taking people to space too. But the closest I can get right now is zero-G flights.
Yeah, we'll be watching for that.
I will tell you, I would go to the moon. I don't want to go to Mars, though.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm not a Mars person.
Well, I'm certainly not these one-way people.
And unfortunately, I think if you're going to Mars, it's early on, you're probably not coming back. So that's why I don't want to go.
Let's see, a few other questions that have come in, and well, this is more of a comment. You should consider writing a book about your adventures.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll do something someday. You know, some of the stuff that I have done doesn't even seem real. I have something one of my friends told me too, who's an author, said, you've got something I've never ever seen. You actually have photographic proof of everything you've ever done and everyone you've ever met, which is not that common. And I do. And I'm grateful that I have been able to capture that. That's when like I said, I started paying attention and thinking, man, I need to document this stuff because I'm getting to meet some pretty interesting people along this journey. And not just the famous people, but even like the women like Sermon and Pervin, like meeting people who their whole life changed from, you know, listening to the moon landing on a radio, you know.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Let's see, a few other questions. I know we're getting close to our time limit here, so if you can go a few minutes extra, that would be great. And let's see, have you gotten many of your friends in music interested in the space program?
My friends in music are already total space geeks, most of them. You know, and that's what's interesting. So first of all, before I even, you know, started working with Buzz, I was always a huge Star Trek fan and sci-fi fan. So I was already like a space cadet in a way that was pop culture. And by the way, that's again why the attracting the people is like, even Buzz would call Star Trek space, not science fiction. He would call it science projection, which is a pretty good way of looking at it, because a lot of what's in Star Trek has become things that we actually have now, you know. And so a lot of my musician friends really love that kind of stuff too. I will say I have a few friends who said they've never seen Star Wars, and I just don't even know how that's possible. But just,
yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure if we can be friends anymore.
Let's see, a few other questions. This one I think I know the answer, but you talked about some of the spin-offs. Do you know if duct tape originally was a space thing? I don't think that's the case.
I don't know if it was originated, but it was used in space, right? They used it during Apollo 13. It was pretty helpful. As a matter of fact, I was doing a project recently and I was like, somebody get some duct tape. It's like the #1 thing to help fix almost anything.
Yeah, I think its origins were actually from World War II. So we can look into that one. Let me see if anything came in via the chat. Some very, very positive comments. Awesome talk. Let's see. You know, the people interested in wanting to learn more, you know, and refreshing to hear some of these. So
Colleen says she wants a shirt. I think I'm going to start selling my Space for a Better World shirts to help raise money.
Yes.
So I'm just in the process of getting some more printed up, because sometimes people do say, where can I get it? So, you know, what I did with Buzz's foundation, what I'm doing with mine, is like everything that I raise goes right back into the outreach. I don't pay myself from the foundation. I just use all of the money to do the outreach. My bread and butter is managing the astronauts' That's how I actually make money, is when I book them and stuff. So I could probably make a lot more money if I didn't spend half my time on outreach, but the outreach is what's really fulfilling. So, you know.
Yeah, is that the most rewarding part of what you're doing right now?
I
The
love
outreach?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like I'm doing on the right track when someone goes out of their way to also to send me a note, like to say, I can't quit thinking about those words, aim higher. You've inspired me to say aim higher, or to aim higher and not settle for, like somebody was like, I went and asked for a raise today and I got it because you said aim higher. And so that's why I feel like, okay, great. Then, I might be having a bad day, and then I hear somebody or read something like that, and then okay, I'm doing the right thing. I'm on the right track then.
Great. Let me just see if there are any other questions in chat. I don't see any. I don't know if anyone wants to ask a question and raise their hand. If they do, here is the time to do it. And I'll take one more look at the Q&As. I think you've addressed a lot of those things in your comments.
I see one from that Carl guy where he's saying, I believe this is Women's Month. Could you say something about
Women's History Month, right?
Occupations connected to space activities? I don't know if he's meaning like countries that, I'm not sure if I understand that, but I will say, so for those of you who may follow me, you'll have seen that I went to Saudi Arabia last month for a conference called LEAP. And it was a wonderful, pleasant surprise. I was supposed to go to Saudi Arabia with Buzz about 7 or 8 years ago. And when they told us that they wouldn't have let me get out of the hotel,
right.
It's like, well, that's not going to work. He doesn't run his own PowerPoint. He doesn't know how to do, AV and make sure that the teleprompter's working. And they're like, sorry, that's the way it is. And so we didn't go. But it's like, well, forget that then. I don't care how much money it is. So what's really interesting is then several months ago, we were asked by this conference called LEAP to come and speak. And so it was me and Cyan Proctor and Susan Kilrain. And I was a little bit nervous about it, but I was really curious. And I had a few people say to me, oh, how could you do that? How could you go to a place like that? How could you support them? And I'm like, man, you know what? Those girls there deserve to see women like us working in space and see what's possible for them. How are they ever going to know what's possible for them if they don't ever get a chance to be exposed to women who are doing the things that we're doing? Now, I will tell you, the thing that was a big shock to me was that I spoke 3 days in a row, and every panel that I was on was all women. And not only that, but you don't have to cover your head. You can wear regular clothes. You have to be respectful and not, wear scantily clad, whatever. But I wore jeans, I wore shirts like this, and I had my hair uncovered, and everyone was so welcoming and so wonderful. And everywhere I went, someone would stop me and I'd think, okay, what are they going to say to me? And they'd say, where are you from? And I'd say, from America. And they'd say, we love America. And so I was like, really? They don't love us everywhere. And so, but I met some really beautiful young Saudi women and young ladies. And it was, I have to tell you, I think it's worth going to places like that, especially for us, if we're able to try to inspire those women and girls. They deserve to have, the chance to be exposed to something like space and women who work in space too.
I think that's a powerful point, that this is about showing them examples and inspiring them. So fabulous. I think I do see one hand raised, and I think we'll make this the last question. So Carl, who asked a few questions, let me see, Carl, if I can turn your mic on. Let's see, I just got to find you there. There we go. Let's see. There you go. I found it. So I'm going to allow you to talk. You just got to turn off your muting, Carl.
Okay, how's that?
There you go. We hear you.
Very good presentation. But my question deals with whether or not you're in contact with the, besides Buzz, the other 3 astronauts who went to the moon. And also, what about those that went around the moon and remained on board the command module? Are you in contact with any of them?
Well, I've known most of them. I mean, those guys are getting pretty old. So they're not out there as much. I'm very close to Charlie Duke, so I talk to him regularly. And I was really good friends with Michael Collins, so he would just call me up and we'd visit and chat. And so, yeah, I know all the guys. I know some of them better than others. I only ever actually got to meet Bill Anders once at an event in Seattle, because he doesn't actually go out and do that many things. So, I mean, you know, the ones that are still pretty active are really Charlie and Fred Hayes. I'm trying to think. I mean, Jack Schmidt's, you know, got out there a bit too, but even I tried to get him to do a gala for his 50th anniversary, and he's like, I think I did enough. So yeah, I mean, I've been very privileged to have known almost all of them in the last 15 years that were still alive. So I'll just tell this really quick. On the 40th anniversary of Apollo 11, they were doing a press conference at NASA headquarters, and I was back in the backstage part before the guys were going to go out, and I realized it was almost all of the Apollo astronauts and me, and just me. And I was the fly on the wall of seeing like these guys all interact with each other. And again, this was before I realized maybe I should be documenting this, you know. But I went home and I told my father-in-law, and he was like, man, you have got to start keeping track of this. Like, this is history, you know, like you're in these rooms. And so anyway, it's been quite a privilege to have, you know, gotten to know most of the Apollo astronauts. And so this is why I feel such a sense of responsibility too, you know, to try to carry on what their stories and make people aware. You know, I was somewhere yesterday. Oh, I was at a dinner yesterday, and I mentioned Apollo, you know, Charlie Duke being the 10th man to walk on the moon, and this guy goes, 10th man? I said, yeah, on the 5th moon landing. He's like, 5th moon landing, you know. So to me, whenever I could like raise awareness about that, like that there were 6 moon landings, you know, get people to start digging into that and learning more about it, and hopefully get them curious enough about these guys, then, you know, that's what I feel like I can try to do, because I actually knew almost all of them. So, and by the way, if you've never watched For All Mankind, I have to admit I resisted that show for a little while. But then I started to watch it, and because it was surreal because of knowing Buzz and Neil and Mike and knowing all the guys, and I knew Alexei Leonov too pretty well. So it was kind of surreal to watch this, but man, that's a good show. If you haven't seen it, I think it does one of the best jobs of explaining what's going to happen at the moon and going on to Mars.
So when are you going up in the Orion, in the Artemis program?
I don't think NASA's going to pick me. So I'm going to have to hitch a ride on probably one of those SpaceX or rides with Jared Isaacman or something, try to talk him into it at some point.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thanks, Carl. On that note, I think what we'll do, Christina, is end for the evening. I think a few other people, let me see. I think one other person raised their hand. Let me see. Let me just make sure.
It's Larry.
Oh, is that Larry?
No,
Larry, real quick, Larry, one last question.
No, I don't want. I just want. Where did you used to sing at?
Oh, well, I was singing bars with my family until I was 22, and then I, you know, one of my favorite places. The first time I went to New York City, I sang at Madison Square Garden. I sang at Red Rocks in Denver. The biggest show I've ever sang at was in the Zocalo of Mexico City for 200,000 people. I've gotten to do some pretty big concerts. So
Yeah, I think I heard some of your. I think a recording. Did you record something?
yeah, I've had a couple of records, and I'm on one of the John Tesh specials. So I used to.
That's a whole different life. That's a whole different life.
Whole different. That was like 2 lifetimes ago.
I just want to point out, we did meet like this. We met in Toronto and at the ISTC in Toronto when Buzz was there, and I was the one that's. I don't know who I approached. It might have been you, because I talked on the phone like this. I was the one that was trying to get Buzz to dance at our ISTC in 2010, and we were auctioning that off to somebody.
Yeah, I kind of remember that.
Yeah. Well, we got $1,800 for that, just that one dance.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Very
So,
good. Thanks, Larry. I think on that note, Christina, some dancing. We will end for the evening. I just want to thank you so much. A very interesting, fun, and enlightening presentation. You've led a very interesting life with what you're doing with the working with astronauts, but more importantly, the work you're doing to inspire that next generation. So we really appreciate what you're doing. And again, thank you so much. And we hope we can interact and do some other things possibly together to continue this mission. So
Yeah,
thank you
I mean,
again.
if I could get to ISDC for even a day or something, I'll see what I can do. It's been
Okay.
a while, but I'd love for people to come to Space for a Better World. You can see what I've got coming up, because I'm going to do a couple of zero gravity flights, one in Houston, one I haven't announced them yet, one in Houston, one in France, on their Kness plane. And then I'm going to do some events in Romania in June, 3 days of space events in Romania. And I'm doing some in the UK in October. And then Nicole Stott and I are probably going to be doing some space camp stuff again in like Thailand and Bali and places like that. So it's going to be a busy year again.
Okay, sounds great. We hope to hear more about it. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us. First, I want to thank my colleague Larry Ahern and also my colleague Fred Becker for all the work they do to support these space forums. Everybody, what I want to do is I am going to share my screen one more time as we close out. And oops, there we go. Let's do this. Okay.
Professional photo, yeah.
Yep. So, yep. So again, Christina, thank you so much. And I also, again, want to thank everybody for joining us. And thank you. I know we went a little bit over, so all those who stayed, thank you all for attending. Have a great evening for those in our current time zone, and have a great day ahead for those in tomorrow's time zones. And of course, a great weekend. We encourage you all to stay safe. So we thank you all. We'll see you again on the 23rd as we delve into space solar power. And you'll be seeing more about the invites coming up for the rest of the space forums this spring. So again, we want to thank everybody for joining us. And I'm going to say good night. And right now, I am going to turn off our recording.
okay, good night.